a tiny Arctic rodent became one of the most famous suicidal animals on Earth. Millions of people believed it. Textbooks repeated it, cartoons joked about it, an entire word entered the English language because of it. There was just one problem. It never happened. Somewhere in the frozen north, a small brown rodent runs toward the edge of a cliff. Behind it, hundreds more follow. They don't slow down, they don't turn back. One by one, they throw themselves into the sea. For over 60 years, this was presented as fact, a real behavior, a real mystery of nature. Scientists studied it. Parents explained it to their children. Comedians built jokes around it. Even today, we still use the word lemming to describe someone who blindly follows the crowd, straight off a cliff if that's where the group is headed. But here's the question nobody asked for decades. Did anyone actually see this happen? Let's go back to where the story began. In 1958, Walt Disney's studio released a nature film called White Wilderness. It was part of a series meant to show audiences the true life of wild animals, shot on location, unscripted, unfiltered. The lemming segment became the most talked-about scene in the entire film. Narrated with a calm, authoritative voice, it showed a mass migration building into a frenzy, thousands of small bodies pouring toward a cliff edge, then leaping into the water below, seemingly driven by some invisible, irresistible urge. Audiences were stunned. The film won an Academy Award, and the image of the suicidal lemming was burned into public memory. But something about that scene never sat right with a small number of researchers and journalists. Lemmings, it turns out, don't live anywhere near where that footage was filmed. The species shown in the film is native to areas of Canada far from the coastal cliffs depicted on screen. The ocean the lemmings supposedly leapt into wasn't an ocean at all. It was a river in Alberta, hundreds of miles from any lemming's natural range. So how did the filmmakers get footage of a mass lemming migration in a place lemmings don't even live? They imported them. According to later investigations, including a 1980s exposé by Canadian broadcaster CBC, the production team purchased a small number of lemmings, reportedly caught by children in Manitoba, and brought them to the filming location. A few dozen animals, not the thousands the footage implied. To make a handful of rodents look like an unstoppable migrating horde, the crew filmed them running on a snow-covered, rotating turntable, close up, from carefully chosen angles that hid the trick. Then, for the film's most infamous moment, the animals were herded to the edge of the riverbank and pushed into the water. The lemmings didn't choose to jump, they were launched. This wasn't a documentary capturing a strange and tragic natural phenomenon. It was a fabrication, built shot by shot to look like one. And it worked. Almost nobody questioned it for over 20 years. Why did it take so long for the truth to surface? Partly because the footage was genuinely convincing. Partly because Disney's name carried enormous credibility. If the studio that brought wildlife into living rooms across the world said something was true, why would anyone doubt it? And partly because the story fit a narrative people already wanted to believe. That nature was full of strange, tragic mysteries, and that some animals were simply driven to self-destruction by forces beyond their control. It wasn't until 1982 that the wider public began to learn the truth, when a Canadian investigative program exposed the staging behind the scene. By then, the myth had already been repeated in classrooms, cartoons, and casual conversation for a generation. The damage to the lemmings' reputation was permanent. So if lemmings don't hurl themselves off cliffs, why did this myth ever seem believable in the first place? Because lemmings do something genuinely strange, just not suicide. Every few years, in certain lemming populations, something remarkable happens. Their numbers explode. A single breeding pair can produce dozens of offspring in a season, and under the right conditions, food is abundant and predators are scarce, and the population grows at an almost unbelievable rate. But that growth can't continue forever. Eventually, there isn't enough food or space or shelter for everyone. And that's when lemmings do something that likely inspired the myth. They disperse. Large numbers of them, driven by overcrowding, move outward in search of new territory. This isn't a synchronized death march. It's closer to a population under pressure, spreading out the only way it can. During these dispersal events, lemmings sometimes have to cross rivers, lakes, or even attempt dangerous stretches of open water. Lemmings can swim, but not indefinitely and not always successfully. In the chaos of a mass dispersal, some individuals drown, not because they intended to die, but because the terrain, the crowd, and simple bad luck worked against them. Seen from a distance, without context, that might look like an eerie, deliberate death march. Add a Disney narrator describing it as obsession and victims of a mysterious impulse, and the image becomes unforgettable, even if it never happened the way it appeared on screen. There's something deeply human about this whole story. We didn't just believe a myth about a rodent. We built an entire metaphor around it. We use the word lemming to criticize people who follow the crowd without thinking, people who walk toward disaster simply because everyone around them is doing the same. But the real lemmings never did that. They were pushed, manipulated, filmed under conditions designed to produce exactly the outcome the filmmakers wanted, then presented to the world as untouched nature. In a strange way, the myth of the mindless, self-destructive lemming says more about the humans who created and believed it than it does about the animal itself. What actually happens during a lemming population boom is, in some ways, more interesting than the myth ever was. Population cycles like this are still studied by ecologists today. In the Arctic and subarctic, lemmings play an outsized role in the entire food web. Their boom and bust cycles affect the animals that depend on them. Snowy owls, Arctic foxes, and various birds of prey often track lemming population swings closely, breeding more successfully in boom years and struggling in years when lemming numbers collapse. That collapse isn't caused by mass suicide. It's driven by a combination of factors researchers are still working to fully untangle, including food scarcity, predation pressure, and disease, all interacting with the extreme swings in population size. In other words, lemmings are a genuinely important piece of one of the most fragile ecosystems on the planet. Their real story is one of resilience, boom, collapse, and recovery, repeating across the decades, not a story of mass, voluntary death. It's worth sitting with a slightly uncomfortable idea for a moment. How many other things we think we know about the natural world came from a single piece of convincing footage, or a single confident voice narrating over the top of it? White Wilderness wasn't the only nature film of its era caught staging scenes for dramatic effect. Insects were reportedly placed on heated surfaces to make them appear to be dancing. Animal fights were sometimes provoked, then filmed as if they had occurred naturally. The pressure to produce entertaining, dramatic footage, combined with the limited ability of audiences to fact-check what they saw on screen, created ideal conditions for myths like this one to take root and spread. The lemming suicide myth survived not because it was well supported by evidence, but because it was rarely questioned. Nobody demanded to see the raw, unedited footage. The film had a trusted name behind it, an emotional hook, and a narrator whose calm authority made the impossible feel scientific. That's the uncomfortable lesson hiding inside this story. Confidence isn't the same thing as truth. A calm voice describing something as fact doesn't make it fact. And sometimes, the most obvious explanation for a strange natural behavior is really a story someone constructed, one dramatic shot at a time. Today, scientists studying lemmings are far more interested in what actually makes them fascinating. Their explosive reproductive cycles, their outsized role in Arctic food webs, and the genuine mystery of exactly what triggers their population crashes. None of it involves cliffs, oceans, or mass suicide. All of it is stranger and more real than the myth ever was. So the next time someone calls a group of people lemmings for blindly following the crowd toward disaster, it's worth remembering where that image actually came from. Not from an animal's choice, from a camera crew, a turntable, and a river mistaken for the sea. Maybe the lemmings were never mindless followers at all. Maybe the only creature in this story that ever blindly followed a script was us.